Your shadow self is the part of you that you don't always recognize, the part of you that was put away. I use an analogy of almost like I grew up in the Midwest, originally from Jersey, but my teenage years were in the Midwest. It reminds me of like the moldy basement, or, for other people in other parts of the country, they don't have basements here in Las Vegas. It might be comparable to the attic, but the basement feels a little bit like dank and dark, and there might be creepy crawly things in there. You might not be comfortable in there. You feel like something's going to jump out and get you. And I've been in some basements where like, some stuff has crawled out. So, woo, shout out to those Michigan basements. But my whole point is that it represents that area that's unattended to. Now, here's the important part for me. This is the part that always gets me, is that it's still part of the house. Knock over my books here, but it's still part of the house, right? When you buy a house, or you're renting a house, or you're going to somebody's house, in, let's say, the Midwest, because we have a lot of tornadoes back there. And so you're in Indiana, Michigan, Ohio, et cetera, Chicago, Illinois. They don't say, oh, okay, let's go to this other house and we call it the basement. Or they don't say, oh, let's go to this other house and we call it the attic. It's not like an annex. It's not an extension. It's actually part of the house. And I love the basement analogy because it's actually part of the foundation of, frankly, who you are and what you represent. Now, if you look at it from a foundational standpoint, I think it's really important to think this is not just you saying, all right, this is part of who I am, but you're also saying this is part of where I came from. One of my favorite quotes about the shadow self is from Carl Jung. And he says, this is actually the opening quote to, I think it was Built From Now, which is individually available. Find it. There we go. So I got way too many books here. Individually available here. You can find it everywhere books are sold. You also find it in the complete Bring Your Worth collection. And this is actually, I believe, the opening quote to Built From Now. That which we do not bring to consciousness appears in our lives as fate. This is such an important quote to me. It's my favorite quote from Carl Jung. We'll get more into it in a second. The shadow represents that part of ourselves that we've cut off from the world. And we've said, this isn't acceptable by the world. This isn't, this is going to go ahead and, oh, it's like the camera got unplugged there. Give me 1 second. Speaking of shadow, oh my gosh. Hold on a sec. I have no idea what's going on with my camera. That is so funny. The ghost of Carl Jung is coming to get me. Hold on 1 second. Let me see what's happening there. Yeah. Hold on, please. I feel like I need one of those old school joints. Where they talk about where they have the one moment, please. That kind of thing. Unfortunately, it looks like that's not happening. So I'm going to go ahead and switch cameras. Thank you for your patience. I'm going to mic off just for a second. Now you can't hear me. There you go. All right. Carl Jung's ghost is trying to get me. All right. Thanks for your patience. So if you were in I'll give a really simple example. If you were in a situation when you were a kid, and a lot of this stuff stems from childhood. If you were a kid and you spoke really, really loud, like super loud, like ear-piercing loud. I have little kids. I know how loud they can be. And throughout that childhood, the people that you respect, not the teachers or anybody, not anyone who's on the outskirts, but but someone you respect, like a mother or a father or a guardian or whatever, is always saying, shut up, you're being too loud. Shut up, you're being too loud. At a certain point, that shadow self might say, you know what? We're going to hide this part of ourselves. And so suddenly, when you get older, you're not comfortable doing public speaking. Or suddenly, when you have to advocate for yourself and you're in a sticky situation or things are hard, God forbid you're in that situation where you need to be loud and need to get somebody off of you, you're not able to find that voice because the shadow's got it. At a certain point, that part that's in your shadow side was deemed unworthy. At a certain point, that part that's your shadow side was deemed unworthy. When I was a kid, I actually had a lisp. And so, it comes up occasionally, even though I'm like, 4 TEDx and TED Talks and all this other stuff. And I'm, I help people with public speaking. I still got my stuff. And so when I was younger, I was sometimes shy about speaking because I had such a strong lisp. And I went to speech therapy and all those things. I talked about that in the Bite-Sized Entrepreneur series, which of course is in the Bring Your Worth collection. And it wasn't until I made peace with that shadow self being like, yeah, Damon, you have a speech impediment and you're also very intelligent and you have all these things that you want to communicate. So you better go ahead and make peace with your words not always coming out right. And over time, now I'm helping other people with their words. So if you're able to work with the shadow a little bit, that can become a strength. It's not always that obvious, not always that clear, but it's just a really simple example. Our shadow is created by that part of us that has often been either from guilt or shame, been put in a corner. Like the basement, it's still there. The joint's still there. It's still there. And in fact, as Jung would argue, as to a lesser extent, Freud would argue, I'm not the biggest Freudian fan at all, but we do agree on this part. And as many psychologists will talk about today, and sociologists, we'll get into that in a second, the more you ignore that shadow, the more power it actually has. As I talk about in one of my previous books, you have to know who's at the wheel. And so it's not a matter of just having the shadow and having the shame and not talking about it. It's also, this has a subconscious, you want to call it that, sometimes a conscious ability to manipulate and to take over our lives, often at the worst possible time. So after the blackout and I got about 10 minutes of conversation, hopefully that gives some insight as far as what the shadow is, what it represents. And again, I love this Jungian quote. That we do not bring the consciousness of peers in our lives as fate. He's basically saying what I just said, is that if you don't understand your shadow enough, if you don't understand that part, that's that frightened child, that part that's that scared ghost that doesn't want to be seen, that part of the basement that never got touched, even though you're living your life, you're living your life in the house above it, but you're neglecting it downstairs and it just gets more moldy and dusty and neglected. At a certain point, it's going to cry out. And that cry is just going to get louder until you actually address and frankly give love to that shadow. There's some great Greek mythologies that are about this. I'm blanking on it right now, but it has to do with two sisters. If you're a Greek mythology person like I am, feel free to throw it in the comments, but it's worth looking up. You can just look it up as the two sisters. I think it has to do with, I want to say it was Persephone, and it was a modification of that. And Persephone is the one that went down to Hades, which is considered the underworld, and then had to spend half the time in the underworld and half the time in the above world. I'm not going to get into the whole thing, but it's a fascinating discussion about those things and parts of us that are neglected. And those neglected parts, again, kind of like Hades, are deemed unworthy and put into the basement. Ooh, we're getting deep today. So deep the camera cut off. All right. If you want to get more insight into the shadow and what it means, my guy. And I think I have it on Amazon. Yeah, I got it on Amazon for you. Link is right here. This book, there's so much history of this book. I got this book when I was in college. I still read regularly. Look at this. These pages are browner than I am. I'm walking the walk here. This is serious stuff. fantastic book if you understand more about the shadow. And there's particular chapters, I believe, that are about the shadow. So you don't have to do, philosophy, 301 or sociology 301 with Damon Brown today. But if you want to get into it, it's a great thing. And you got to read the label. Shout out to Jizza. You have to read the label. Edited by Joseph Campbell, the hero of 1,000 faces. So, if you know your history, Joseph Campbell was that guy. Rest in peace to him. And his work was actually seminal as far as the hero's journey. It was seminal to my work, and he even played a part in the best-selling books that you guys have bought, including the Bite-Sized Entrepreneur, and talking about the hero's journey. It's edited by him. And so if there's anybody who would be, in modern terminology, the OG of understanding Jungian ideas, it would be Joseph Campbell. Luckily, he edited this probably a handful of years before he passed away. I think this came out in the 80s. Fantastic book. It's still available on all the major platforms. The link is below. If you understand more about the shadow, go as deep as you want to go. Another one, which I came across, and thank you so much to Pursuit of Wonder, which I stumbled across this video recently, and it made me think about this concept, and realize I hadn't really talked about it on Bring Your Worth TV. It's The Shadow Become Who You're Afraid to Be. It's an 8-minute cartoon, really intense, very beautiful, particularly at the end. And with the discussion that we've had, you can kind of see the arc of where things are going, but it's still worth the journey. And it really, again, 7-8 minutes, beautifully done. It breaks down very quickly why the shadow matters, how it can affect you, and how you potentially integrate it, which we're going to get into more right now. All right, but fantastic. Thanks for riding with me. It's a deeper episode than usual, and I love getting deep with y'all, so I hope it's useful to y'all too. Again, this is the Bring Your Worth Show, coming to you live every Wednesday at 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. You wouldn't think I'd say this every week, but I say it at least once a week, and I still can't get it out. Shout out to my shadow. Bring Your Worth TV, Wednesdays, 1:11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, Vegas time. I'm entrepreneurial coach Damon Brown, here to serve you and help you as a non-traditional entrepreneur, particularly a side hustler and a solopreneur. You can subscribe for free. Join the 18,000 plus people that have come through. I appreciate every single one of y'all. It means a lot to me, and for us to be able to have these kind of conversations. All right, so we established what the shadow is. And again, if you want to go deeper, the links are below, particularly if you want to grab the Jungian book, as well as check out the Pursuit of Wonders video. Shout out to them. I don't know who you are, but